All right, I think we should get this first meeting started. So thank you everyone for joining us. My name's Stefan Kuhlmann. I'm the Mayor of the City of Casey and I declare this meeting open at 4 p.m. Welcome to our community members who are present in the public gallery and those who are watching online via the live stream. This evening we have 5 officer reports to be considered in open council. I'd like to also acknowledge my fellow councillors here tonight. Or this afternoon. We've got a full complement, so welcome to you all. We're joined by a number of senior staff here today, starting with Miss Jen Bednar, Director of Customer and Corporate Services, Mr Steve Coldham, Director of Community Life, and Mr James Collins, Director of City Planning and Infrastructure. We're supported this evening by the Office of Council team. Thank you to the team and our audio-visual team who are coordinating the live stream. And we have a number of other senior staff here from Council this afternoon. So welcome to you all and thank you for joining us. I'll move on to 1.1 now, which is our Casey Council Statement of Acknowledgement. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture and pays respects to their elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. I'll now move on to item 1.2, which is our Council's diversity statement, the reading of the diversity statement. The City of Casey is home to remarkable diversity with many cultures, languages, faiths and communities of worship, ages, LGBTQI+ identities and landscapes together forming our rich and dynamic community story. From our first Australians to our most recent arrivals and every wave in between, the City of Casey welcomes and represents all community members and their respective ambitions to live healthy, rewarding and happy lives. We recognise this diversity as our strength and we aim to share, nurture and celebrate it. I'll now move on to item 2, which is the confirmation of minutes from our previous meeting. There's one previous meeting minutes to be confirmed, and this is for the special council meeting held on the 19th of November 2024. Do I have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of this meeting? Councillor Ross.
Move the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Taylor, thank you. Is there any opposition? Excellent. With there being no opposition, I call for a vote. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. All right, we move now to item 3, which is the declaration of interests. I've considered my obligations under section 130 of the Local Government Act 2020 and I do not have any interests relevant to the agenda papers. Do my fellow councillors have any conflicts of interest in the agenda that they wish to declare? I'll take silence as there being no conflicts. I'll now move to...
Mr Mayor, through you, I have a general interest in item 5.2, which I wish to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Patterson. That's noted. Do any council officers or other council officers have a conflict of interest regarding reports presented this afternoon? No, I'll take that silence as no interest to declare. And with that, I'd now just like to make some brief introductory remarks on behalf of myself as Mayor and also the fellow councillors. I'd just like to say to the residents and the ratepayers who've joined us today in the gallery, thank you. It's great to see people out here showing interest in the work that we do and the reports that we're considering. On behalf of the councillor group, I'd just like to extend our welcome to the community and say that as a group of ward councillors, we are available. We're delighted to be back on council and that we are here to help and support you. So we do encourage any issues to please reach out to each of us as your local ward councillors. I'd also like to just take a moment to thank a few people. This is our first meeting, so it's an opportunity just to thank the officers who've gone to a lot of effort performing our induction and our training. I know it's been a very jam-packed couple of weeks, and on behalf of councillors, I'd like to thank you for all your efforts. And secondly, just as Mayor, I take on this role obviously as a full-time position, but I'd like to thank my fellow councillors for the time that they've put in over this very intensive period. I know many of you have full-time jobs, and your employers, thank you as well, because you've been very accommodating during this very important period as we build our new council team. So thank you for all your efforts, and I look forward to working with you all going forward. On that, I think we should maybe move into some of the resident issues, which is our item 4, which is our public question time. So today there are 16 public questions that have been submitted through Council's website for this afternoon's council meeting. In accordance with Rule 65.11, any person who submits a public question must be in the gallery at the time the question is read, and response is due to be read. If a person is not present in the gallery, the question will not be read. However, it will be recorded in the minutes of this council meeting, together with a copy of the written response provided to the person who submitted the question. I'd now like to ask the CEO, Mr. Patterson, to read out the public questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question has been received from Michael Ball, who is in the gallery this afternoon. The subject is Berwick Springs name change. And the question, as a resident for 20 years, I do not agree calling the lake Guru Nanak. I understand council was not the naming authority. However, council will be consulted in the signage process. Firstly, can council please consult with the Berwick Springs community about this proposal before any signage is decided upon or placed? If not, can council please advocate on behalf of residents to the relevant authorities responsible that residents want to be consulted and included in that process? And Mr. Collins will respond to that question.
There is no role for council to consult with the community on signage proposed to be erected by the state government or Melbourne Water on Melbourne Water land. However, council officers can advocate for the state to consult with residents on their process, and we can also write to the relevant department accordingly.
The next question is also from Michael Ball about the Berwick Springs name change. As a resident of Berwick Springs for over 20 years, I do not agree calling the lake Guru Nanak. Born in 1469, considering that residents and I were not consulted. Noting the lake was chosen in late 2022 for renaming, has council already been consulted as part of the signage proposal? If so, what is the timeline for installation, and will residents be informed as to the design before installation? And again, Mr. Collins will respond.
Council received a general query from the state government regarding signage at the site. The installation of any signage is exempt from a planning permit under clause 52.05-10 of the Casey Planning Scheme. This means council will not be consulted in the future regarding the design or timing of installation of any signage on the land owned by Melbourne Water.
The next question has been received from Amanjit Gill. Are they in the gallery this afternoon? No. The next question is from Jason Rundle, also not present. And the next one is from Aldonia Ferreira. Thank you. The subject is again Berwick Springs Lake, council role past and future. And the question, will council advocate for the community's legal and democratic rights regarding the Berwick Springs Lake renaming, specifically the right of directly affected Berwick Springs residents to be consulted? And Mr. Collins will respond.
Council has previously advised Geographical Names Victoria that, as Melbourne Water are the registered owner of the land and therefore the naming authority, they would be responsible to lead the community consultation process. At all times, council were clear that the community were required to be consulted about any proposed changes. At no time were council officers informed that this would not occur. We encourage residents to contact the state government directly to express their concerns with this process.
The next question is also from Aldonia Ferreira. The question is, what specific representations has council made or intends to make to the Victorian State Government on behalf of Berwick Springs residents regarding this renaming? And again, Mr. Collins will respond.
Council officers made it clear during discussions with the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing and Geographic Names Victoria that consultation with the community on any proposal would be expected. Council agreed to support any engagement with the community by promoting the engagement via our communications channels. However, this engagement did not occur. Council has not resolved to make any formal representations to the state government at this stage.
The next question is from Jodie Clarence. Right. Right. All right. Well, we'll take that in good faith, but it's an unusual situation to have one person represented as two different people. But nevertheless, the question is relating to the Berwick Springs Lake. On what date and by which exact government department was the City of Casey requested to conduct a public consultation on the renaming of Berwick Springs Lake? And again, Mr. Collins will respond.
During preliminary discussions in November 2023, it was suggested by the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing that the City of Casey run the consultation process for the renaming of the lake. A letter dated the 11th of December 2023 was sent to the Register of Geographic Names advising that, as Melbourne Water are the registered owner of the land and therefore the naming authority, they are responsible to lead the community consultation process with the support of Geographic Names Victoria, not Council.
The next question is also from Jodie Clarence regarding Berwick Springs Lake. On what date and exactly what, that is the exact wording of the response, and by what manner, that is email or other, was Casey Council's exact response to this request?
The letter
Again,
was
Mr.
dated,
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
The letter was dated the 11th of December 2023 and was sent via email to Geographic Names Victoria. It clearly stated that as Melbourne Water are the registered owner of the land and therefore the naming authority, they are responsible to lead community consultation process with the support of Geographic Names Victoria. It set the expectation that consultation is needed for any changes.
The next question is from Gary Page regarding 2025 council meeting dates. The question: community members are required to attend council meetings and be in the gallery to have their public questions heard. 5 p.m. is not acceptable for their employed and others. The majority of suburban councils surveyed start their council meetings at 7 p.m. They can have 2 meetings per month, possibly a general purpose and other committees to engage with the community. What specific community engagement has been undertaken to gauge the needs of the community when council officers recommended 5:30 p.m? And Mr. Mayor, Ms. Bednar will respond to that question.
Thank you. Councils are not required to undertake community engagement when setting the dates and times for their council meetings. Officers have based the recommendation for shifting the council meeting time from 4 p.m. to 5:30 on a range of factors. This has included the costs associated with running the meeting, including employee wages and requirements that need to be met under the Employee Enterprise Agreement, the accessibility of meetings with live stream now being a channel that residents can view the meeting at a time and location that is convenient to them, and through conversations with councillors. If community members are unable to attend the council meeting, a copy of their public question response is provided to them and included in the council meeting minutes.
The next question is also from Mr. Page, and it relates to a submission to the Audit and Risk Committee. The question: council may have failed to comply with the Local Government Act, possibly requiring the urgent cancellation of planning permit A00581/20 related to the Hallam Road Waste Transfer Station site, and possibly take other actions. Information and questions submitted to the Audit and Risk Committee was based on material for the EPA and to be published. When are we likely to learn the answers to the submitted questions? And again, Mr. Collins will respond to that question.
Planning permit PLN A00581/20, approved on the 30th October 2020, relates to a boundary realignment to Lot 10, which is a land subject to the recently approved waste transfer station. A condition of the planning permit for the waste transfer station requires the boundary realignment permitted by planning permit PLN A00581/20 to be certified and registered at Land Victoria prior to any development commencing on site. There is no council-owned land impacted by the boundary realignment, and therefore reference to the Local Government Act is not relevant at this point in time. The role of Council's Audit and Risk Committee is to monitor, review and advise Council on the standard of its financial control, risk management and corporate governance in accordance with Section 54 of the Local Government Act 2020. It has no bearing on the assessment of planning applications, which are considered under the Planning Environment Act 1987.
The next question has been received from Anthony Chisone, who is not with us today, and he did submit 2 questions, so we'll move past those. The next question is from Viv Payne. Doesn't appear to be here today. That person submitted 2 questions. And the next question is from Bernadette Dixon, who's also not with us. And that concludes the questions for this afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Mr. Patterson. We'll now move on to item 5 of the meeting, which is officers' reports. There are 5 officer reports this afternoon in open council and no closed council reports. Item 5.1, it's the adoption of the 2025 council meeting dates. I'd like to invite Ms. Chloe Casey, Manager of Communications and Corporate Governance, to present the report.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. As per Council's governance rules, Council must annually adopt the schedule of dates, including the time and location of Council meetings. The current arrangements of the Council meeting cycle, being held on the 3rd Tuesday of each month, commencing at 4 p.m, has been in effect since April 2020. In this report, officers have put forward a recommendation to move the start time for the Council meetings to 5:30 p.m. The meeting commencement time being proposed considers a range of factors, including that live stream is now a channel that many community members prefer to view the meeting at a time that is convenient for them. The report also outlines the dates for the monthly cycle of meetings and briefings, including special council meeting dates for the purpose of hearing submissions to the corporate suite of documents following the community consultation period and the mayoral election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Do any councillors have any questions for Ms. Casey in relation to the report and recommendation? I'll take silence as no questions. Now, in accordance to our governance rules, I'll now call for a mover and seconder to accept the recommendation contained within the report. Do we have a mover?
Yeah, I'll move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Move the motion. And do we have a seconder of the officer's report?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Taylor, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And as seconder, Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the recommendation? No. Would anyone else like to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Crowther?
Mayor, should the recommendation be lost, I wish to foreshadow an alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. I've noted that. Would anyone like to speak in opposition to the recommendation? Councillor Pereira?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'd just like to say I do think that time's not actually suitable for many of the people in the community. So I'm happy that I'm keen to hear what Councillor Crowther will be offering as an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Pereira. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion, the officer's recommendation, which is at 5:30? Councillor Perry?
I would like to say as well, 5:30 is too early. Yeah, for people to actually attend council meetings and for people on council who have jobs during the day.
Great, thanks for that, Councillor Perry. Anyone else like to speak to the officer recommendation? Councillor Ross?
I understand that council put quite a bit of thought into moving the time from 4 to 5:30 and that included looking at the financial implications as well as the workload implications for staff and also for councillors. We know that when we're making decisions, we make decisions best earlier in the day. So for me, having an earlier time is better than a later time. And I recognise that a lot of the community can't get here until later, but there's also a fair part of the community that later doesn't suit either. For example, parents with young children who are trying to get their kids settled, people who rely on public transport. So that's why I'm in favour of an earlier time rather than a later one.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would anyone else like to speak to the recommendation before we put it to a vote? I'll take silence as no further questions. on that, I will now put this officer recommendation, which is for a start time of 2025 meetings at 5:30. All those in favour? Noted, yeah. I'm just checking with governance that, because we have to record everyone's vote. And then all those against? And I'll take that as that motion has been lost. So on that, I would now like to note Councillor Crowther has flagged an alternate recommendation. Councillor Crowther, would you like to take councillors through that alternative recommendation?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Our Casey community has demanded transparency and accessibility to our council meetings. I propose an alternative motion regarding the 2025 Casey Council meetings times. Whilst I endorse the 2025 meeting schedule of dates outlined by Ms Casey, I propose the commencement time of the meetings to be 6 p.m. Under our governance rules, public questions will only be answered publicly if the questioner is in attendance in the gallery. The current 4 p.m. time and the proposed 5:30 time does not allow accessibility for our community to participate in the council process. We have a very large municipality and we must allow time for our community to travel to Bunjil Place outside of work hours and participate in the council process. I feel the 6 p.m. meeting time would increase the opportunity for more residents to attend and have their questions answered publicly.
Thank you for that, Councillor Crowther. I'll take that you're moving that recommendation. Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the recommendation for a 6 p.m. start time? Councillor Pereira? Thank you. Seconded. Would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'd just like to thank Councillor Crowther. I think that's personally, I thought a later time, but I'm happy to compromise. I think 6 o'clock will be quite suitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would anyone else like to speak either for or against the alternate motion? Councillor Perry?
Can I just ask a question? So if we put in 6 o'clock now, can we change it to later if it's appropriate in the future?
I might refer that question through to Ms Casey.
Through you, Chair. So this would be setting the council meeting times for all of those dates listed for 2025. The report then comes up again in December where you have another opportunity to review the time at that point with the dates. Alternatively, you can, if you have to raise special council meetings throughout the year, we can set those at the time that you request at that point. However, this would be setting the time for all of the meeting dates.
All right, thanks for that info.
Thank you, Ms Casey and Councillor Perry. Would anyone else like to speak to the alternative recommendation? Councillor Taylor?
I also think that 6 o'clock would be a more appropriate time for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ross?
I think I'd just like to add that, as I said before, this is only one forum for residents, and it's really important that we do offer other opportunities and other times of the day, and perhaps other days that give people the opportunity to put questions and discuss things with councillors, and to remind residents that they can always book appointments to talk with their councillors as well. This is not the only forum you have.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Any further questions or comments? I'll take silence as no, so we can move through to a vote on the alternative motion to change the time to 6 p.m. start time. I'll put this to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? I'll take that as carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to We'll now move on to item 5.2, which is committee delegates, and I will refer through to Ms Chloe Casey again to provide comment on that report.
Thank you, Mayor. Council is required to annually appoint delegates to various associations, boards and committees to ensure council meets its legislative obligations, advocates on behalf of the Casey community and monitors the expenditure and management of funds provided by council to other organisations. Due to the date of the next Audit and Risk Committee Council appointed the 2 councillor representatives to the Audit and Risk Committee at the special council meeting on the 19th of November. Therefore, those 2 positions have already been filled. The report outlines how many positions are available on each association and board, where relevant, a primary and secondary delegate to be appointed, and the time commitment required throughout the year. This report is seeking council appoint delegates to the Connected Libraries Board, the Municipal Association of Victoria, the Western Biosphere Foundation, the South East Council's Climate Change Alliance, and the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Casey. Does anyone have any questions for Ms Casey? Yes, Councillor Pereira?
Sorry, it's not really a question. I just wanted to know if you could please correct the spelling of my name.
Duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms Casey in relation to this report? So on that now, we'll move through each of the association boards and committees to seek nominations for each of the positions that are vacant. I'd just like to firstly note Audit and Risk Committee, so...
We'll just grab a mover and seconder for the broad thing and then seek nominations.
Oh, okay. We will have to pass this report, sorry, I've just been clarified. So I'll need a mover for the report as presented by Ms Casey. You've got a mover, Councillor Pereira, and anyone to second that? Councillor Ambrose. Thank you. Now we'll seek a vote. All those in favour?
We just need to seek the nominations and then...
Okay. Apologies. Thanks, Governance. So it's been moved. We'll now seek the nominations for each of the positions as listed in the recommendation. So noting Audit and Risk Committee was appointed last meeting, and congratulations to Councillor Eves and Councillor Pereira, and there's no secondary delegate for that committee. I'll now call for a nomination to the Connected Libraries Committee as the primary delegate. Councillors, do we have anyone nominating for that committee? Thank you, Councillor Dowling. No further nominations. I'll now put that to a vote. So all those in favour for Councillor Dowling? Thank you. Carried unanimously. There's no secondary delegate for the Connected Libraries board position. So I'll now move on to the Municipal Association of Victoria. I will be nominating as the primary delegate for the MAV. Are there any other nominations for that position? Is that for the primary position or the secondary position? Second. Thank you. So I'll just go through the voting process. So I'll just have to check with governance.
So you can do for primary and secondary. Yep.
Okay. And I'll take nominations now for secondary position. Thank you, Councillor Ambrose. And now I'll put those 2 nominations to the vote. So all those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So say, you went as the primary for that. If somebody wanted to also go for that, would we vote between the 2 of you?
Yes, that's how all positions work, yep. Thank you. And that was carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move now to the Western Port Biosphere Foundation. So we have a primary and a secondary delegate. I'll now call for a nomination for the primary delegate. Councillors, do we have any nominees? Thank you, Councillor Crowther. And for the secondary delegate, yep, Councillor Dazon. Any other nominations? No. So we've got 2 nominations. I'll put that now to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. And I'll now move to the next committee, which is the South East Council's Climate Change Alliance. So we have 2 positions, the primary delegate and the secondary delegate. Have I got a nomination for the primary delegate? Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Yes.
And any other nominations and for the secondary delegate? Thank you, Councillor Ross. No other nominations, so I'll now put that to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. And I'll move to the final committee, which is the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. As per the terms of reference, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are noted down as primary delegates. And then we also have an additional position for a councillor as a primary delegate, and then also a position for a secondary delegate. Councillors, do I have any nominations for the primary delegate position? I'll take Councillor Taylor as a primary delegate. And Councillor Rowe for primary delegate? Yep, okay, so we've got 2 nominations for the primary delegate position. Yeah, okay. So I've just got clarification from governance. With 2 nominations, we now need to take a vote. And first, we will vote for Councillor Taylor for the position of primary delegate, as he nominated first. And I will now go to a vote. All those in favour of Councillor Taylor? And I'll take that as carried. Thank you, councillors. And I'll now move to a nomination for the secondary delegate for the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. Have we got any nominations? Councillor Rowe, thank you. No further nominations. I'll put that now to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 5.3, which is the Civic Function Schedule 2025. And I'll refer now again to Ms Chloe Casey, Manager of Communications and Corporate Governance, to present that report.
Thank you, Mayor. The Civic Protocols Policy outlines that an annual calendar of civic events for the upcoming calendar year will be set by resolution of Council. Holding civic events is a way in which Council recognises important contributions of the community, including acknowledging exceptional achievement in sport, the arts, charitable endeavours and community service, commemorative events that celebrate significant occasions of importance to the local community, or official delegations recognising an overseas or interstate delegation. In recognition of the cost of living pressures facing our community and a strong desire to not spend ratepayer funds where possible, the officer recommendation in this report is to adopt the annual special council meeting celebration as the only civic event in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Casey. Do any councillors have any questions for Ms Casey in relation to the report? Councillor Ross?
I think it's kind of a question and a comment. So I'm just a bit concerned about the wording that we state it's the only civic event, whereas I'd be assuming during the year that we obviously want to acknowledge the special contributions of so many of our community treasures we have here in Casey. I'm making an assumption that the wording doesn't preclude us from doing that.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Ross. So the report is stating that this is the only event that we are endorsing at this time as part of the recommendation. However, as per the policy, should other events come up throughout the year, Council can consider those.
Thank you, Ms Casey. And Council, any further questions? There being no further questions, I'll now call for a mover and seconder to accept the recommendation contained within the report. Have we got a mover? Councillor Walter, thank you. And do we have a seconder for the report? Councillor Dizon, thank you. Councillor Walter, would you like to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Dizon, would you like to speak to the recommendation?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the recommendation, either for or in opposition? Councillor Pereira?
I'd like to just say I'm happy to actually see this as an agenda item because I did witness a lot of wastage in the previous council with the civic events, and I think there are other ways we can connect with the community, and I do congratulate. I think it's a good cost-saving measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Would anyone else like to make comment or speak to the recommendation?
I would just like to ask,
Councillor Perry?
is there a list of civic events that are possible throughout a year? You know, like we're just new to council, we've got no idea of what I know councillor Pereira has seen it, but we don't know what there was in the past.
Thank you, councillor Perry. I might refer to Ms Casey to speak to the report and the schedule.
Through you, Chair, the policy outlines the events that are possible for consideration as a civic event, and there's been a range of different events that have fallen under those categories in the past. We don't have an exhaustive list because they are assessed by the criteria in the policy, so they may vary.
Thank you for that, Ms Casey. If I can indulge, I have a question, Ms Casey. Are you able to maybe clarify what events are still possible if we pass this motion, which is quite a limited number of events, in terms of genuine community events that we may want to hold as a council group over the coming year?
Through Matt, just to clarify, your question is in relation to civic events or community events to be held?
Are you able to maybe distinct between what is a civic event, what's a community event? Because I know there is a feeling amongst the council group of wanting to hold community events to engage
Sure.
with residents. Yeah.
So a civic event is an event that is held or run by council or by the mayor as an event through the categories listed in the policy that I read through earlier. We hold a number of, community events throughout the year as well that are separate to a civic event. And so off the top of my head, there's things like the Casey Kids Carnival, I can't think, the Business Awards, there's a range of other things that don't qualify as a civic event. So it's not precluding the council in holding other events, it's just stipulating the civic events as such, which is those ones that are run and defined by the council.
Thank you, Ms Casey. Any further questions from councillors? Councillor Ross?
I appreciate you trying to give the definition. I still think it's probably a little bit vague for what we want to know, but maybe that's something we can refine over the next few months, over time.
Through you, Mr Mayor. A civic event is one that's really hosted by the mayor and the councillors. I think that's really the distinction. It doesn't, as we were all saying, precluding a whole range of other community events which we engage with, and we run dozens of those throughout the course of the year, and there can be others, and I know that there's been a number of conversations about additional events that some councillors have an interest in designing, and we're certainly supportive of those being explored as well. But civic events are those that, you know, historically might have been a mayoral ball or things of that nature, that are more historic and sort of legacy in their nature, but that's, you know, what really is defined as a civic event, one that's hosted by the mayor and councillors and delivered directly by them.
Thank you, Mr Patterson. Any further questions from councillors on this report? I'll take that silence as no, and we will now move, in accordance with the governance rules, to call for a vote. We've got the mover, sorry, yep. I'll call for a vote. So all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. We'll now move to item 5.4, which is the quarterly community report for the period July through to September 2024. And I'll now call on Marion Gregg, the Manager of Strategy, Innovation and Transformation, to speak to this report.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm here to present the quarterly community report and seek your endorsement of the report and for it to be shared with our community via the City of Casey website. The quarterly community report is prepared each quarter to report to our community on council's performance. This quarterly community report provides a summary of council's performance for the period of the 1st of July to the 30th of September 2024. The report highlights progress on the council plan and budget. It reports on council's progress against the initiatives in the 24-25 annual action plan, as well as community engagement, our financial performance, capital works projects, and information about significant procurements undertaken by council over the period. As of the 30th of September 2024, all 35 actions are in progress and tracking to plan. Highlights this quarter include employment pathways and inclusive programs, progress on Casey's climate action plan, and delivery of phase 1 of council's customer service delivery model. There are 11 community engagements undertaken through Casey Conversations, our online engagement website, and one of the most significant pieces was the Shape Your City 2024 engagement,
where our community provided key input to support the creation of Council's next 4-year strategic documents. As this report included activities prior to our council election, it includes engagements specifically undertaken by our administrators. Council's Capital Works program for 2024-25 features an investment of $139.5 million, delivering approximately 336 approved and continuing projects. And there were a number of key projects completed this quarter, including Ray Baston's skate park, drainage renewal program, key aspects including May Gibbs Swale, Casey Fields Oval's 4 and 5 pavilion upgrade, and the Clyde Recreation Reserve District AFL cricket development. And there's highlights within the report on a number of ongoing projects. Our financial performance for this quarter show a surplus of $287.5 million, which is 12% favourable to budget, with higher than anticipated developer contributions received being the main contributing factor. Finally, the report details 4 contracts over $5 million that were awarded in the quarter, and these related to playgrounds and play assets, concreting works and general maintenance services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Gregg. Does any councillor have any questions for Ms Gregg in relation to the report? No, thank you. All right, I'll take that silence as a no. So with that, I will now call for a mover and seconder to accept the recommendation contained within the report. Do we have a mover?
I'll move it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. And do we have a seconder for the report?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Just got in there earlier. With the mover and seconder, I'd now like to ask Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the report?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. As the seconder, Councillor Walter, would you like to speak to the report?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Walter. Would anyone else like to speak to the report, either for or against?
I know I've got a lot of stupid questions today.
Councillor Perry?
Was this, is this the report in the, in this briefing? Because I read the whole thing. I thought we were going to go through it line by line. No, that's all right. I'll speak to you outside of, separately to this meeting then. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So yes, it's exactly the report is included here is what we'll be releasing to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. We are, for the benefit of the audience, we are all coming, this is our first meeting as governance, and we're all coming to terms with the processes and how it all works with our briefing. So thank you for your patience. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Have we got Councillor Pereira?
Just simply like to point out that today is the last day for submissions to the EPA consultation process for the Hampton Park Waste Transfer Station. Just like to let people be aware of that.
I'll take that as a comment, Councillor Pereira, but we will keep it relevant to the report. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the report at hand? I'll take that silence as no. So with that, we'll now move to a vote. All those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move to our final report, which is item 5.5, which is the contract variation CT 000522 curbside collection. And I'd now like to call Mr. Michael Jansen, the Manager of Sustainability and Waste, to present the report.
Thank you, Mayor Kerman. Councillors, this report seeks an approval for a variation to our curbside collection contract. The contract provides for collection and maintenance of bins for our 3 household bin services. Variation is to support the contractor with clean-up costs that are associated with the increased numbers of fires that are in waste collection vehicles due to e-waste and batteries being incorrectly placed into bins, and they're known as hot loads. Since June 2023, there have been 14 hot loads, and they've all been in the recycling stream. Under the arrangement, the contractor would continue to pay for any damages to its own vehicles and equipment, and council would pay for the clean-up costs and disposal of the material. At the current rates, we expect that to be in the order of around $100,000 to $120,000 per annum, which equates to less than $1 per household. We can accommodate the increase in the current financial year from expected savings in the waste budget. And for future years, it would be incorporated into the calculations of the waste services charge. Officers believe that the request is reasonable and that it was unforeseeable at the commencement of the contract, and therefore we recommend to accept the variation. And in the meantime, we will continue to work with the contractor to help educate the community and provide opportunities for alternate e-waste and battery disposal.
Thank you, Mr Jansen. Are there any questions for Mr Jansen in relation to the report? I'll take that silence as a no. I will now move for a mover and a seconder to accept the recommendation contained within the report. Have I got a mover from the floor? Councillor Rowe. And have we got a seconder? Councillor Ross. Thank you. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to the recommendation?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. As seconder, Councillor Ross, would you like to speak to the recommendation?
No, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would any other councillors like to speak either for or in opposition to the recommendation? Councillor Pereira.
I just wanted to highlight, yes, the battery fires are becoming an increasing problem for the community, and proper recycling of batteries and disposal of batteries is a huge issue. I think there are many people in the community that are still not aware of proper disposal, and I'm not sure if council can do something to help disseminate that sort of information, but I think that's a good move because it is going to become increasing, and the battery fires at the tips and all that too, it's going to be happening. It's just a fact of life. It's all over the country with all the vapes and all those sorts of things that people are disposing, throwing in the garbage. They don't realise the impact that has, even electric toothbrushes, all these things that have these little lithium batteries in them. They're in a lot of products, so I think it'll be great if we could help to spread that information into the community.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly,
Councillor Perry.
so obviously, Michael, you get the recommendation, like you know that there's a problem. I can't remember what they're called, but the contractor tells you that they need this money to cover whatever cost it's costing them. I mean, I know we're at the tail end of that conversation now, but is that money better spent, educating like what Councillor Pereira was just saying, and just not having this problem in the first place? And how often does this come up? You know what I mean?
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Mr Jansen.
Yep, through you, Mr Mayor. Both of those strategies are valid. So, firstly, the reason for the variation is because the number of fires has increased since the company has put in a tender. And so at that time, they were working on, it happens every now and then, so they couldn't foresee the cost that it would be impacting on their business. So we're able to quantify that because we can quantify the cost that it takes to clean up and dispose of the material. We would have had to dispose of the material anyway. That would have been our cost in any case. So the additional cost is about cleaning up, and we would only pay where the incident occurs and the receipts and the evidence is there. In terms of the education, absolutely, we have increased our focus on that, and we have actually put billboards, hoardings on buses, and as a part of an overall education program which targets batteries and e-waste. In combination with that, we have to have disposal opportunities as well. So we're one of the only councils that provide vape drop-offs. It's limited, but it's a start. So we're looking at those options as well.
And just going back, the 180 grand is to pay for what's already occurred, or is that just to...
Beg your pardon. No, it's from now on. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So there is some back pay in that. So that is about this financial year. So there will be some cost. The 110 is what we're expecting in the next financial year as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Jansen. If I can indulge, just in relation to that response, so if at the end of this financial year, the costs of the clean-up are not as had been put forward in this variation, is that something council will retrieve back?
We won't pay for it because we only pay when the incident occurs. So we will pay for what's happened to date under the agreement. So when this agreement starts, so there'll be a retrospective payment of around that $100,000 mark. That is covered, but from now onwards, there will be a requirement to provide the evidence of clean-up at the time of incident, and we will only pay when the incident occurs.
Thank you. And a supplementary question to that, is this, in terms of contract variations, is obviously a very significant, large, long-term contract.
Yep.
Variations of this nature of unforeseen, I guess, experiences or incidents, is it common commercial practice for council to sue these variations, or is it absorbed normally into these contracts?
We wherever possible, if we don't think it's a reasonable request, or if it should have been foreseeable, or if they're just trying, then it wouldn't get to this stage. It wouldn't get to council. We would negotiate to deal with that out of council, and they wouldn't get a variation. Is it common? It happens in the industry, but it's not all the time. So I think under this contract, which is a 7-year contract, we've had 2, and I wouldn't expect that we continually get variations, but where it's appropriate, it's a regular industry practice to indicate that there is no value for council as the client to financially punish a contractor under the contract. Otherwise, we won't get the job done.
Thank you, Mr Jansen. Any further questions from councillors? No, I'll take silence as a no. We have, thank you. We have got movers and seconders. I've got a screen in front of me that alerts me to that. On that, I will now, no further questions. I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And that completes our item 5, officers' reports. Thank you for everyone and for the speakers for taking the time out to present your reports. I'll now move to item 6, which is consideration of the reports of committees. This item today, there are no reports from committee delegates because we've only just appointed our delegates today. I note the records of discussion as listed in the agenda papers. Thank you. We'll move now to item 7, which is petitions. We have received one petition this afternoon. The petition has been accepted and it complies with the petition requirements in the Governance Rule section 63. This petition was nominated by Councillor Taylor. I'd like to offer Councillor Taylor the opportunity to move the petition. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. You'll move the petition. And do I have a seconder for the petition? I was looking this way, Councillor, so I'll take Councillor Pereira as the seconder. Councillor Taylor, would you like to speak to the petition?
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to acknowledge the residents. I know this has impacted the residents quite significantly. So, that's,
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Taylor. And as seconder, Councillor Pereira, would you like to make comment?
Yes, I would. I think this just has arisen, this whole situation has arisen because of the lack of consultation, I believe, by the state government. This may have been avoided, all of this, if there was proper consultation. Unfortunately, a lot of people misunderstood what happened and there was a knee-jerk reaction to it all. And maybe a bit more consultation might have avoided this current situation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Just for the benefit of the online who don't have access potentially to the screen here, I will read out the title of the petition, which is changing the name of the Berwick Springs Lake to Guru Nanak Lake. And Councillor Taylor tabled the petition signed by 103 signatories. And the petition will be referred to the Manager of Growth and Investment to respond to the head petitioner. So that's the recommended approach, course of action. So we've got a mover and a seconder now. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the petition, either for or against? No, I'll take that silence as no. So on that, we will now put this to a vote. All those in favour? And all those against? None? So, and against? No? Okay, so carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Yep. And with that, we'll move on to item 8, which is late reports. There were no late reports for this council meeting. Moving through to item 9, urgent business. There were no urgent business items received for this council meeting. And item 10, closed council. As noted at the start, there were no closed council reports for this council meeting. And on that note, I'll move to item 11, which is to close off this council meeting. I declare that the meeting is closed at 4:56. I'd like to thank the members of the public joining us in the gallery and also those who are watching the stream online. Thank you also to the officers who've been present today and to the AV team and to councillors for getting through your first council meeting. Thank you, everyone. Meeting closed.